What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to discuss even more iOS 17.2 features and changes, along with the confusing missing feature. We're going to discuss how iMessage is kind of on Android, iPhone SE 4 leaks, new iPads and new Macs coming in just a few months, a crazy AirTag story, and more. And as always, if you want to stay updated with everything going on in the world of Apple, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Also, check out the Apple Den newsletter. Okay, so let's start by talking about iOS 17.2 and the RC build. So the RC is basically just the final version for developers and for public beta testers. The official public release for everybody else will be next week. So we'll talk more about that near the end of this video. But in iOS 17.2, we saw the collaborative playlists feature, one of the top features in all of iOS 17. And it was in iOS 17.2 for the first 3 betas, but then it was removed in beta 4 and it's still missing in the RC build, which leads you to believe that it's not going to be in the final public release of 17.2, which is super unfortunate. But what I found interesting here is that it's actually mentioned in the code. So in the code of the RC build, I did some digging here. This was just my personal findings, and you can see that collaborative playlists are mentioned multiple times in here. So I'm not sure if maybe there's something to do with spam, because you could see there's code in here referring to requests and, pending invites for people, but I don't know. It's just confusing that it's in the code, but we do not see it actually here, on the forward-facing software. So like I said, there's a slim possibility that we do see collaborative playlists get pushed out server side, on Monday or whenever iOS 17.2 gets released, but it's seeming to be more likely that we're gonna have to wait until a future version of iOS 17. Now, there was something very interesting that I found in the release notes for iOS 17.2 RC, and it's this bullet point right here that says that with AirDrop, you can now share boarding passes, movie tickets, and other eligible passes via NameDrop. So I tried this, and I'm not sure if it's because my passes were expired, but I could not get this to work. And I'm pretty sure this is not exactly the same as NameDrop for contacts and, transferring files. I believe you do also have to hit share at the bottom to actually share that pass. So I'm going to keep playing with this, and I may have, a video coming up that shows this in action, but that is something new that's been added in 17.2. And they do also mention that there's expanded contact sharing options, and I've tried to see, if there's anything new with the actual NameDrop, like when you just put your phone to another phone, and I've not seen anything new. So I'm not exactly sure what that's referring to. And I did also want to mention the new widgets in 17.2. So these are the 4 new widgets that are included in iOS 17.2. And 2 of these I actually use on a daily basis now. Like I have these on my main device, and I only use like 4 widgets total. So I'm really liking these. I'm using the digital clock, which is this one right here. And this is actually a complication in the standby mode as well. So if you use standby mode, you will see this clock in here. And then also this right here, this is the other widget I use. I believe this is considered the daily forecast. Yeah, the daily forecast right there. So it shows each of the few upcoming days, the lows and the highs, and what the temperature and weather is going to be like. So both of those are super handy for me. Oh, and something else I've been loving in 17.2 are the rain totals. So for example, if I go into the hourly right here and go down to the precipitation totals, it shows the last 24 hours and the next 24 hours. So I've been using that more than I thought I would, along with the moon phases. I don't even care really about the moon, but I just find this animation, this whole, process of seeing what the moon's going to look like on certain days is just super cool to me. And you can see the illumination percentage down there. Everything changes in real time as you're scrolling. Also, if you go into the settings and go to health and then go to data access and devices and then into Siri and you turn on access health data, that's going to give Siri access to your health data. So you're going to be able to log things. You're going to be able to ask Siri certain questions. Now, this has actually been pretty hit or miss for me. I thought it would be a lot more accurate than it has been, especially on the watch. So you can see it does have some data right here for weight. So I guess when I logged my weight, you could see there when I did that. But I found it to be pretty accurate from the phone. But on watchOS 10.2, when I try to log or ask, information about my health, it seems to hang up and just not give me a real answer half of the time. So this is still not perfect, although on the iPhone, it works like 90% of the time. Also this week, we did see a new firmware update for the AirPods Pro 2nd generation, both the Lightning and the USB-C version. Now, I've been using these these. I use these anytime I go to a grocery store or pretty much anytime I go out into anywhere in the public. I have my AirPods in my ears listening to a podcast, and I've not been able to tell a difference in this one. So the last update, which came, I believe, a month ago, we did see a pretty big difference in things like conversational awareness, and even the noise cancellation seemed to be a little bit better. But after installing this new firmware, I've not noticed any difference whatsoever. So if you have a different experience, let me know in a comment down below if you do have the AirPods Pro 2. But as far as anything else goes in 17.2, we pretty much covered everything here on the channel. We've covered a lot. So I will have my What's New video coming on Monday. Of course, it's going to cover all of the new features and changes. There are actually a couple that I saved that are in there that I've not talked about yet on the channel. Nothing major, but I did want to save them for that video. So definitely stay tuned for that. So I do also want to talk about the performance real quick. So I did run a fresh Geekbench test last night, and you can see we did score a 2941 on the single core and a 7284 on the multi-core. So surprisingly, that was lower than my first run in the multi-core score right here, but you can see it is higher than some of the previous. It's also lower than some of the previous. So like I said, don't put too much stock into these Geekbench scores. They're fun to log and just to see the progress over time, but don't take it on a version after version basis, because it's really going to be so close that it's not going to make a huge difference. But as far as battery life goes, I have to say battery life has actually been really good on 17.2 for me. So you'll have to tell me what I started this video at in terms of battery life, but you got to keep in mind I am screen recording on this device, so it does eat up more battery life than normal. But you can see here on my iPhone 15 Pro Max, which is my main device, I've been getting pretty solid battery life. So I didn't actually update to the RC until the day after it was released. So just keep that in mind when looking at these charts, the 10-day chart. So yeah, nothing to complain about here in terms of battery life. So let's go ahead and talk about what to expect next from Apple, because next week is going to be a big week for software, as it always is when we have a big release. And 17.2, in my opinion, is going to be the biggest iOS 17 release, potentially of all of iOS 17. Definitely the biggest update so far in iOS 17, but really the only other major update we had was 17.1. So 17.2 is a major update, and that's going to come most likely on Monday the 11th. If not, it could come really any day that week. Anytime between Monday and Wednesday is a good likelihood. And then we should also see iOS 17.3 beta 1 start next week as well. So we should see that the day after the public release. That's what Apple typically does. So if we get the final release of 17.2 on Monday, we could see 17.3 beta 1 for developers on Tuesday. And then, like I mentioned earlier, do not expect to see a beta 2 until 2024. Probably not going to see a second beta for 17.3 until some point in January. So keep that in mind, just a precursor ahead of time that you might not want to install the first beta on your main device, since you're going to have to go a while without a second beta. All right, so now let's move on to the latest Apple news. And this past week, Apple deemed the first iPhone SE as vintage. So this just means that Apple will no longer guarantee repairs since it's now 7 years old and the warranty has expired. But the reason I bring that up is because we do have new rumors or leaks on the upcoming iPhone SE, the 4th gen iPhone SE. And this is according to Mac Rumors. They're saying that the iPhone SE 4 is expected to use the exact same battery that's found in the base iPhone 14. They say that partially assembled prototypes of the next iPhone SE have been seen equipped with lithium-ion batteries bearing the model number A2863, which Apple has already used in the past. The battery itself features an improved capacity compared to the current iPhone SE 3. So a bigger battery, we're going to have the iPhone 14 frame, potentially USB-C, potentially a 48 megapixel, camera on the back, potentially the action button. This iPhone SE is going to be incredible whenever it releases. Hopefully it releases in 2024, but who knows? Okay, so now we have to talk about the hottest story of the week, and that is the fact that Android now has iMessage. Kind of. So I had a friend who's on Android, super against Apple, super anti-Apple. He texted me and it was a blue bubble. So I thought, the world flipped on its head, but that wasn't the case. He was just using this new app called Beeper Mini. And this, of course, allows Android users to have blue bubbles without needing to sign in with an Apple ID. And this is crazy because it actually works so seamlessly and there are no real caveats, unlike every previous attempt at doing this. So with this app, Android users can send high quality photos and videos. They can see inline replies and tapbacks, basically everything we can do on iMessage, and the service is just $2 a month. as of now. And I'm sure that price will increase over time, and I'm sure Android users will continue paying for that service. Now, it's interesting to note that the company raised $16 million in funding, and the app's code will also be made open source. So I don't know. I'm not so sure Apple's going to be shutting this one down, although at the time of recording this, there is actually an outage for Beeper right now. So I'm not sure if that's related to Apple, trying to shut this down or not. Okay, so update. It looks like Apple is actually trying to shut down Beeper because the founders are now admitting that the issue is coming from Apple's side and not theirs like they originally claimed. And one of the co-founders tweeted out, "Buckle up, this is going to be a wild ride." So we might be looking at our next big cat and mouse game with Apple, and as you know from history, Apple usually always wins that game. So this will be very interesting to follow, especially since Beeper is not just some random company that came out of nowhere. They have several $1 million in investments, and it's a legit company. So we'll have to see where this goes from here, but it looks like there's going to be some bumps along the way. So just know that if you're trying to sign up for this Beeper service. Okay, so now let's talk about the new Macs and the new iPads that are coming in the next few months. According to Mark Gurman, Apple is planning to launch the 13-inch and 15-inch M3 MacBook Airs, along with two iPad Air models with OLED displays, a 10.9-inch and a 12.9-inch, and also two iPad Pro models with OLED displays. He's saying that the iPads and accessories are expected to launch around the end of March alongside iPadOS 17.4. As far as the Macs go, he said the Macs are being developed alongside macOS 14.3. That software update is likely to be released between the end of January and February, but the hardware may not ship until the March timeframe. And he goes on to say it's not unusual for Apple to hold launch events for the Mac and iPad around March. So that's a very interesting inclusion in the report there, because we might actually be looking at a spring Apple event to introduce the M3 MacBook Air along with the iPad Airs and also the iPad Pros. So if you're wondering also about the base model iPad, just the iPad, the cheap entry-level iPad, and also the iPad mini, those are most likely coming in the second half of 2024. And this news comes from Nikkei Asia, who says Apple is working with China's BYD, a key iPad assembler, to move new product information resources to Vietnam. NPI involves a tech company like Apple collaborating with suppliers on the design and development of new products to make sure the blueprints are doable. This is the first time that Apple has shifted NPI resources to Vietnam for such a core device. Engineering verification for test production of an iPad model will start around mid-February next year. The model will be available in the second half of next year. So iPad Air and iPad Pro in the first half of 2024, iPad and iPad mini in the second half of 2024. It's going to be a good year for the iPad. Now, we also have an update on the Apple Card situation. So as you know, a couple of weeks ago, the Wall Street Journal reported that Goldman Sachs and Apple will be ending their partnership in like 12 to 18 months. So basically, by the time 2025 rolls around, the Apple Card is going to have a new partner. It's not going to be Goldman Sachs anymore. There's been a lot of speculation on who the new partner could be. There's rumors of Amex, there's rumors of Synchrony, a lot of different ones, but now Mark Gurman has a new theory. Gurman thinks that JP Morgan Chase might actually be the preferred partner for Apple because, you can see all of these reasons here. He outlines several reasons why Chase seems to be more likely than Amex or Synchrony in this partnership. So this should be very interesting to follow. And again, we still have a ways to go until anything is made official. But again, I will say it time and time again, don't worry. Nothing about your Apple Card is going to change. Like nothing in your savings account, your money is fine. Everything is fine in there. I saw a lot of people freak out about this whole situation, but I don't really think there's any reason to freak out. I also don't see Apple ending the Apple Card. I don't think they're just going to axe this and, discontinue it. I don't think that's very likely at all. And then finally, as tradition, we have to talk about another crazy AirTag story. And this time, a 46-year-old man bought an AirTag and put it on his boss's car and tracked him for 4 full days. The boss, aka the victim, started receiving alerts that an unknown AirTag was located nearby, but wasn't sure what that meant. And he had to wait for his daughter to return from out of town days later to resolve the issue. And when the daughter got back, she searched, and of course, she found the AirTag inside of a black magnetic case. She then connected her phone to the AirTag, which gave her the last 4 digits of the owner's phone number. That's when her father cross-referenced those numbers with his own contact list and found a match It was one of his employees. Of course, we know now it's that 46-year-old man, but that's crazy. And the best part is yet to come, because also, after he got arrested and charged with aggravated stalking, a felony, he said that he placed the tracker on his boss's car to, quote, test out its abilities to use for issues in his own personal relationship. That might be the most obvious lie I've ever heard, but that is a new one here on the channel, and we've been covering AirTag stories for years now, so I had to share that one with you. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, if you did, I would appreciate if you give it a thumbs up. Also, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on my 17.2 video coming next week, along with a lot of other coverage. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.